It's good to work for an incompetent PM. Sometimes you can, with data, you can make him competent. But an insecure PM is always dangerous. So
Yeah.
insecure PM milta to move out here. So be like an electron, restless, keep moving. I think that's for the PM2s, the initial PMs who are aspiring. मैं पोजीशन जो बोलूँगा Adobe का पोजीशन नहीं है ये. कहीं कल मेरे को कोट कर देगा श्रवण या समर एल्स. ये Adobe का पोजीशन है. But if you don't want to be an AI PM, you have to be a PM knowing AI.
अब how do you essentially differentiate कि हाँ यार कि मैंने तो अपना 100% दिया लेकिन probably I was not the right fit.
Empathy बाहर के लिए नहीं अपने लिए भी चाहिए होता है. When you work with your team members, do you have empathy for your own people you're working with? Do you have empathy for the same CEO you're working with? End of the day, he's your stakeholder. One interview tip in case you come into this company, गलती से Adobe बोल दोगे तो बाहर कर देंगे पहले. Fine, this is my observation and which I think is true for many. Question कुछ पूछता हूँ वो पूरा रामायण शुरू हो जाता है. A lot of people say I am not a very good communicator. मैं तो कह रहा हूँ गूंगा भी अच्छा कम्युनिकेट कर जाता है.
How do you see India leading in product space, and which sector is going to come out as the prime one?
If I knew the answer, I would probably bet my money on some stocks there.
First of all, how are you, sir? How are you doing?
Very good. I think it's that time of the year, especially for an American company, we're just slowly winding down for the year. Technically, this is the last full working week. Adobe goes into an official break from 22nd, but I take a couple of days before. So 20th onwards, we go on break. But this week is the full working week, and then next slightly on the lower side, so winding down mode, so party mode as you call it. So
but sir, first and foremost, even before we start the session, I think I'm super grateful. I think you're somebody who I recently got to know, but I have started having deep respect and admiration for the kind of person that you are, even with the one small conversation we did have and the way serendipitously we met. That's a story for, I think, for another time, or maybe these people would also would want to know how that happened. But in general, Chanda, I think Dhilip has been super kind. We recently spoke and I think we connected on a lot of things that we believe in life. और एक और सत्य बात मैं आपको सच बताता हूँ, मेरी ही तरह ये भी भोले बाबा के भक्त है. ये भी सत्य बात है. इसमें कोई झूठ नहीं है. तो first and foremost, sir, I cordially welcome you here. I think these kids, they are super passionate about becoming better thinkers in life and better humans in life, and I think they'll give you a hard time, but it'll be a fun time today.
Yeah, thank you. I think and you did warn me the other day as well. So I've वो कहते हैं ना वो ओखली में सर दिया है तो कुछ करके निकलेंगे या करवा के निकलेंगे. So I'll be super grateful. But I think thanks team. I think I'm really as much as Shravan mentioned, I am equally grateful and thankful to him for putting me in the spotlight in the true sense, pun intended. So I'm sure I will probably end up learning more because I do a lot of reverse mentoring nowadays where I learn quite a bit from, I'm using the word millennials or even Gen Z. So I'm with my gray hair, definitely I'm not, you can probably guess my age, which I'll not give out right now, but I think it'll be a good learning hour or hour, whatever 10 minutes we have. So
awesome.
So that's looking forward, Shravan. So,
awesome. So Janta, just for you, all of you, I just want to do a brief introduction about Dhilip and the kind of work that he has done. I think he started his journey doing a BSc in statistics in 97. I think, and post that he did his PGDM in 2000. So first and foremost, if nothing tells you about from this background, the only thing that you can take away is anybody can become a good product thinker. The background rarely matters in that scenario. So that's the first thing I want to kind of take away from this. The second thing is, I think he started his journey with Wipro, right? He managed a team of 20 plus people on specifically for BPO applications like billing, payroll, and the first switch that he made was to Microsoft, right, as a delivery lead. And he spent considerable time there in multiple roles as a program manager, as a global program manager, then a global senior program manager, and then finally moving out to the role of a senior PM, spending 17 years in Microsoft, working across diverse applications at multiple places like building data and analytics systems for Microsoft and working over there, and specifically the IT services part where he essentially did multiple stints over there. And finally, I think last year, Dhilip, if I'm not wrong,
almost a year, 14 months now.
Almost 14 months. He moved to Adobe, where he's currently a GPM. I think he leads multiple functions in the technical communication space and does exploratory work in the LLM space also, that how do you build applications through which you can consume content and things like that, especially for B2B clients. But I think they're also slightly moving towards into the B2C segment, and that's the area of expertise he's building up now. So once again, super grateful, Dhilip. I think this is how we would start. I hope I did justice to the introduction. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. I think the clincher was anyone can become a PM. So that was a clincher. Thank you.
For sure. So let me just quickly start. I think the first question that I have for you was, you didn't have a very conventional movement into the PM role. You spent considerable time into program management roles, and I think you looked at it from multiple lens, from a top scale, maybe at 0 to 1 scale also, 1 to 100 scale also, and you did multiple functions over there, right?
Yeah.
So how did you essentially think that after spending like 10, 12 years of your diverse experience, you wanted to move into the senior in a product management role? And what was your understanding of it? That's the first question. And I think the second question out of this is that over your like 20 odd years of experience, what are the principles that you essentially understand kind of differentiate a great product manager from somebody average who essentially, or somebody who's just moved into the role? Or to put it very simply, what makes a great PM?
So I just to there are two parts to the question. So let me take the first one. In terms of what prompted me into, I'm using the word formal product management role. So this goes back actually to 2001, I think, maybe, or 2002, maybe. I'm exactly missing the time, but effectively time when I was in the Wipro. While Wipro is known for its services, which effectively goes and sort of builds the customers and builds the service hours and stuff like that. I was part of the information systems team, which is actually what now people call it the CIO's office or CDO's office, and effectively the internal IT arm of Wipro, which used to service. And Wipro had multiple companies, and BP was one of them. And I ended up building accidentally, and I'm using the word accidentally because I never thought when I came into the role that I'll sort of do something like that. We actually ended up building almost a full-fledged mini ERP, if I were to use that word, which had attendance management for the people who were working there. We had integrated payroll into that. We had done incentive management out of that system, and we also integrated with SAP and some of the other corporate systems. So it was actually a full-fledged product in a very agile mode during the time when agile was not even there, or probably it existed in some nook and corner. So and I ran that about for 3 years, where I had engineers with me. I had the support organization who would do a 24/5 support, and hearts of hearts, I sort of enjoyed that role where we sort of build grounds up the entire. I can safely call that as a product. It used to be called MAP, Managing Agents and Processes, something like that, if my memory is right. So that version, which we sort of built almost 3 or 4 versions when I was there. We used to do almost a quarterly release of that product with the set of folks I had. That was sort of my first stint into product management without realizing that I'm doing product management. I really enjoyed that role. I sort of carried that. And I have this unfortunate bug, which I think I told you as well the other day, that every 3 to 5 years, I want to do something very different what I've done before. So I moved into Microsoft, did an extremely different role what I had done in the past. And I don't want to obviously stretch my story here, but fundamentally, come 2012-13, I realized I think what I enjoyed that time when I was probably at the crossroads of my career, about 15 years of my work experience, somewhere close to a midlife crisis in the sense. So I had a very nice mentor, a German, who I had a very nice conversation with. He had come over to India, and he said he was my skip level back then, and he said, "Hey, what is that you want to do?" So we did a very nice listing. I think this is something which I want you guys to take away. In terms of he went and told me that don't tell me the roles, because roles can be fitted in. You can actually get into the roles, and I mean roles. Each role has a competency. So he started helping me to put together some sort of a competency map to say that, hey, what are the things which you love and which you are good at, and what are the things which you excel when you do. Sometimes you may love something, but you may not excel in that, and vice versa as well. So when we made that map, there were 2-3 roles which are sort of really brimming out of that entire experience. Was the product management piece. Other was actually consulting, which I think, given I'm in my stint in Microsoft and other places, I could have gone into Microsoft consulting services, but I think there was a different route, and that had a different logistical challenges. So these two sort of played, sort of weighing in, and then I sort of put my fingers on, and Microsoft was known for its the PM and the community there. So I sort of went in. So what started off as something which, without realizing, a PM role which I was doing, sort of got formalized a few years before, about 10 years now. And then the saga continues, and I've been sort of looking at it. And sort of 2 things stand out if I were to put my key strengths which I bring to the table. One is, I think, the customer empathy, which we sort of keep talking loosely, largely, and I'm sure most of your folks around will also be talking about it. market. But I think I sort of lived almost all my roles with customer empathy as sort of my key element, and that also goes back to the human I am. I think because end of the day, I can't certainly wear a hat of a customer empathy and have and do things which are probably exactly anti-customer or anti-people. So it's also how you sort of shape your personality over a period of time. So I think that carries through in that sense, and an innate inquisitiveness to know more and do new things. And I think the knowledge seeker, if I were to use that word, I think these two things, and that is also that reason why I sort of shift careers or change roles every 5 6 years 7 years sometimes, so that I mean have that quest to know more, have the quest to learn more, and that the world in fact is going to be like that. It's not going to be engineering kar liya, yeah, MBA kar liya, ho gaya, I'm done with it, and that's not going to run through. You have to be reskilling almost conservatively every 2 years, maybe more as well or faster as well. So I think given that, I think have these two, and these are two of my traits which I carried, and I think that has held me in good stead almost 2+ decades now. So that's point number one, or the question number one which you had. On the second point, I think if I were to really put some of my, I mean, I just noted some points down in terms of what I could think what makes a great versus a good PM. So I think if I were to really put something in terms of from a great PM perspective, and if I were to really put, and I'll define them as in three different categories, because the time and place where you are at this point in time will vary if you're a senior PM, if you're a GPM, if you're a director. So that's how the greatness or goodness is going to be defined. But if you're a typical PM2, APM, joining aspiring PM, I think three things which I think of which one I already stated, which I think will hold very, very good. One is the hunger to learn and learn. I think that should be your mantra. I mean, especially if you're starting 1, 2, 3 years, 5 years. I mean, don't arrest yourself with learning. And I do this to my team as well. Some of my team members are so I mean they know sales, they know pre-sales, they understand the customer success. Their quest to know more is sort of inbuilt, and I think that's something which I would ask all of you to sort of imbibe as part of that. I think that would differentiate a good versus a great guy. Then the second point, which again is the exploration part. So sometimes people maybe are at the surface and maybe one level below the surface. Go deep. I think that is there is no substitute to going deep in certain areas. You may not like a particular area, that's fine. I think there are enough and ways to start liking things. But I think if you like something, go deep. Probably be the best in the field or in the organization or in the sphere which you are sort of counted for. So, and I think Shravan did that in one of the roles which I incidentally recall. I mean, go do so well something that you're sort of the sought after guy in the system. So that's something which I would essentially for the PM2s and the initial ones who are looking at it. And the third is, I think, communicate. I'm using the word communicate not as a talker, but someone who sort of is like spread yourself into communities, spread yourself into the organization. Support you supporting, say, a particular stakeholder, internal or external, or customers. Spread yourself. I think because the amount of learning which you're going to get by spreading yourself. In fact, I sometimes I used to wonder if I'm probably in a wrong job in my initial years, because I was reasonably a smooth talker. I could get through with a lot of senior and they used to call from a dev to a VP. I could really navigate the conversations and sort of engage people. If you don't have that skill, try and build that, because that's going to be very handy in the coming years. I'm using the word soft skills because there's no other name to that. But fundamentally, that's one piece. So communicate at all levels, all stakeholders. Go deep as much as you can with them. Understand, because that's where a lot of things you'll learn, they will learn. You will get to know a lot of things which you'll probably not get from these workshops, typically the discovery workshops you do as a PM. In short, be like and if you're a science student, be like an electron, restless, keep moving. I think that's for the PM2s, the initial PMs who are aspiring. If you're a senior PM, I think 2 things or 3 things which really differentiate somebody who's great is smart prioritization. I think prioritization is the key, because at that level you will start to do the conversations of prioritization. If you're not the decision maker, at least you will start to put models and put frameworks there to put that prioritization in. But my suggestion is have a very strong sense of be opinionated. Have a sense of reason why you're prioritizing a particular thing versus the other thing, with of course data and all that stuff, which I think is a common jargon now. But fundamentally, it's about having an opinion, having a stance, and stick to it unless somebody proves proves you otherwise. So I think that's very critical for a senior PM kind of a role who's sort of 5, 6, 7 years experience in the industry. Maturity in handling conflicts, I think that's a very critical differentiator from a great to a good or a good to a great. I mean, take it. I mean, right from my first job to the current job, as late as a few days back, the engineering, product, marketing, everybody. I mean, you'll have conflicts with everyone. Everyone has egos. Everyone has things to manage. And the more senior you go, the more sophisticated the fights will be. The fights will happen, but the fights will be sophisticated. And so that, given that, I think what you need to be is good at having that maturity, emotional maturity in handling. And you can start to do that. You can start to build that much early in your career, because that is how it's going to define again a great to a good, as Shravan asked. And the last one I think is from this category of is the ability to influence. Be smart at influencing, because if you don't influence, because it's a very tough role, especially you start going up, because you'll get lonely over a period of time. So start to build that influence category in the competency in the much earlier years. Influence maybe developers first, influence probably your designers first, influence your key stakeholders whom you're working with daily. Start with that, and then slowly you can start to influence. I mean, as good as a board, when you become a CPO or a head of product, or even running your own company, you will have to influence the board as well. So have that streak of influence all through your stick. So these are sort of three areas which I think is very critical from a good to a great for a senior PM. For a GPM director kind of a level, I think the ability to vision. I think it'll be murky, it'll be hazy. You'll have to sort of show the path, navigate, have that vision. Sometimes think 1 year, sometimes think 3 years. Measure the 3-year roadmap, yet sort of be flexible to move things around. So that's something which I would probably call it for a senior one, which I'm sure is not in this group but aspiring to be one. But I think be mindful of that. You will also have to be a good motivator. It's not about how you operate, but it's how you are able to operate with a set of people. How are you able to motivate somebody? If you're around, are people enthused to work and give share and come with ideas? Or if you're around, they sort of sneak out and do something else and things like that. So ability to motivate people skills are, I would say it starts much earlier, but I think when you get into a GPM director, I think people skills become very, very critical. So long answer to a short question, but essentially I would probably put them in 3 categories to start with, for these 3 categories of PM.
This is very well, I think, put. I think the context that you have set across clearly speaks the over communication quality of a good PM. I think that makes a lot of sense for all of the people here. But fundamentally, मैं आपसे ना मतलब एक deep सवाल पूछना चाहता हूँ सर ये सवाल है कि लोग बहुत बार बात करते हैं और इन बच्चों की problem, one of the problems that they essentially face is a lot of times when they move into any kind of a role, maybe it's somebody who's worked 8 years or 10 years in an experience and they move into a PM role like you, or maybe it can be someone who's just starting in their career, right? How do you make choices on the fact that what makes a good product culture? Because a lot of times people end up moving in a PM role and they realize that they are either not doing product management, they're doing program management, and the philosophical dilemma there is that they work 2 years on something believing that they are product managers. They end up knowing that kahin na kahin na product sense build hui, na influence build hua, na empathy build hui. तो आप एक अच्छी product culture को पहले तो कैसे define करते हो? How do you define good product culture? And how do these students should actually make choices about what kind of roles? Because a lot of times it's about, it's very glorifying to kind of get into this role. I'll be very honest about that. But but people generally are not able to decipher the murky side of it, or the slightly dense side of it, or the slightly lonely side of it. And how do you essentially think that this is a place which fosters creativity and I should actually join there?
Got it. And it's a good question, both with respect to not only, as you said, for the PMs, but essentially for any role which you get into, because it'll apply to all kind of work which you do. I think 2 things which, out of my own experience, I'm going to talk about. So there's no theoretical point here, but essentially, from a good culture, and it could be why product culture. It could be a good culture as a company. It need not be a product culture, because if you're a good company with a good culture, you'll have good product culture, you'll have a good design culture, you'll have good engineering culture, and so on and so forth. So I think when you're coming from outside, I think the first and the best thing is to look at. I mean, now social media is full of these ability to figure out which is a good place, and there are these glass doors and places like that. LinkedIn and other places where you know how the culture of the company. So do that research when you get in. That's or when you want to get in. That's point number one. The second, I think, is always the referrals or people whom you know in the community cohorts, because I'm sure LinkedIn thankfully opens up a community of sorts in that sense to figure out, hey, if you know somebody of somebody, can I go and approach and figure out how can I go and take that piece in. So I think do that research, secondary research with respect to understanding from people how they're getting into. And then the third is, I think, during the interview, which I think, and I also have made mistakes. I'm not perfect, but there have been times where I've landed into a role thinking it'll be good. Uh, I had to suffer 3 years. I'll talk about that separately. But I think more importantly is that once you've made that choice, if without getting into the nitty-gritties, because when you, especially when you're a fresher, you probably may not have the luxury of wanting to work with somebody. So that is ruled out. But when you're changing jobs, when you're moving in within the company or within the organization, have that a sense of understanding of what the role is. Have that clarity in terms of what you're getting into. Because while what JD may say something, but have that conversation with the hiring manager or the kind of interviews you get into, it'll give you a sense of what that organization is all about. And if you cannot make out that is the subtle sense of a PM you should be starting to develop. Because if you speak for half an hour with somebody, you should be able to figure out where are they really heading as a company, where are they really heading as an organization, where are they heading as a culture. I think that conversational ability to pick I don't know if I can use Hindi. I don't know if there are people from outside, but maybe in English as well. Understand the intent of the person than the content what he's speaking. So sometimes content is misleading, but the intent cannot be misleading. I mean, you should have that innate sense, especially as PM when you go, because your customers will ask for something, but there is hearts of heart they're actually asking something else, and they're just portraying a symptom which they probably are feeling. The pain could be symptom, but the root cause could be something else. So have that ability to go deep with respect to what he's spoken. हिंदी में बोले तो वाच्यार्थ और लक्ष्यार्थ में फर्क करना आना चाहिए. So वाच्यार्थ कुछ बोल सकता है, लक्ष्यार्थ कुछ और होगा. So that is the third piece which I say. Of ये सब हो गया, but you have got into a role and you feel that you are stuck in a place where it is probably not the right. Good cultural companies, assuming that you've done the research first, will always have a good exit path with respect to looking at multiple roles or looking at people within the organization. And there are these. I'm using good companies like even Adobe and I mean in Microsoft as well, and in my past friends who have worked in other companies. There are always these pockets where you can actually go and say that, hey, this is not the right role for me. Can I start to explore? With, of course, there is an investment made on you. Take that time, do whatever you can do in the first 6 months to a year, whatever the policy of the company is. In the next opportune time, start to move out. The good thing with this cultural generational culture is that, unlike probably my parents, and I may not qualify in that, but my parents, they may get stuck to one organization for 30 years or 40 years, 50 years. That's how the organization. But this generation is not like that. So if you can cut that out from if you feel that this is not what you want to do, I mean, get into a conversation. If there is a possibility to move into a different role within, have those mentorship conversations. I mean, this is one piece of advice which I just want to leave with any work wherever. Build your relationships, build your network. Never burn bridges. That's a bad deal. Second, build mentors. And I mean, I can't tell you what you should be looking for a mentor. Look at from typically a complementary skills mentor, because if you like this, if he's like you, probably you're not going to learn together, or maybe sometimes yes, but largely if you look at a complementary mentor, he is going to help you navigate. Somebody 1 level up, 2 levels up, if he's open to it, those are the guys, because those are the ones who can actually influence you when it comes to, if I were to differentiate between a Shravan and Dhilip comes to the same job, and if my skip level or maybe my VP, who's probably 3 levels up, has to say, hey, this guy, I have had conversations with him, he's got and Shravan probably is more talented but has not had a conversation. Sometimes that matters. So ability to navigate that organizational boundaries is very important, assuming that you've got stuck into a bad role. So that's something which I would do. And of course, you have the ability to move out at any point in time. But when you move out the next time, don't make the same mistake again, given you've already done once. Don't repeat the mistake.
One question that I always think, that I think kahin na kahin earlier, when you are early in your careers, there is this thing that a lot of times people think that quitting is a bad thing, right? It shows that you were weak, or you couldn't gel well, right?
Yeah.
Because हर डायरेक्शन से आपको यही सुनाई दे रहा है कि तुम काबिल नहीं, तुम अच्छे नहीं हो, और ये एक बार आपके सेल्फ वर्थ को बहुत ज्यादा डिमोटिवेट कर देता है और आपको बहुत चले जाता है, और what it leads to is an even bad decision, the next decision that you take, right? Because अब how do you essentially differentiate कि हाँ यार कि मैंने तो अपना 100% दिया लेकिन probably I was not the right fit. मैं इसी सवाल को थोड़ा continue कर रहा हूँ, but I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. I think more from a understanding that it was not you. When should you decide that? And there is a point, I think, जहां पे आपकी कई बार आपकी भी गलती होती है, तो ये ईगो और थॉट प्रोसेस में बहुत ज्यादा डिफरेंस आ जाता है. लॉट ऑफ टाइम्स पीपल थिंक इट्स egotistical, right? But lot of times it is more on the lines ki when people are hearing all those feedback, consensus comes from you in all directions, you start feeling very down and you feel कि यार कि अगर मैंने quit किया that means I lost the game, right? ये चीज कैसे हम डिसाइड करें या ये बच्चे कैसे डिसाइड करें कि यार इस ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में मैं काम कर रहा हूँ and I'm working as a PM, right? And maybe things are not working out. Is it me or is it genuinely the thing that I couldn't gel well, or it is just that we had different thought processes around that? How do you figure that out?
So I think one piece which I have always used, especially when you said the quit and my loser piece, there will always be some work which will be allocated to you given in your initial phase of career. The work which you're doing, see if it is having an impact on the people whom you're servicing. So if I'm, for example, I'm building a particular module which is going to have, which is going to be used by 1,000 users. I'm just bringing up here an example. And if those 1,000 users are very happy using one of the stuff which you have done, and there is a substantial amount of feedback to say that, hey, even if to say that, hey, ये सब ठीक नहीं है, but ये सब ठीक है. Even if it is to say there is an impact which you are creating in some way or the other. So that is always a good sign that what you're doing is good. But there's something else which is sort of stopping you from getting into that mode. So that is one. It's a universal principle. If you're servicing the customer and if he's sort of in the right frame of mind, the rest doesn't really matter in that sense. So I think that probably one of the biggest key takeaways. Have that pulse check. आप जिसको service कर रहे हो, is he happy? Is the person whom you are who is going to use something like a B2B2C, the customer of the customer whom you're really servicing. आप engineer हो, if the module which you have made, go and ask the PM, go and ask the person, or check telemetry sometimes how well it is used. If it is used, then I think आप में problem नहीं है fundamentally. There is something else, the politics at play or whatever you want to call that. I think that is one piece which I always would want to look at. The second check, which I think which is more social / more I would say it's a bit more softer in nature. You will always have whenever you get into an organization, unless you are a complete loner, which I think is also not a good thing for a PM. But fundamentally, if you have a set of community where you interact and engage with, say your squad, as we call it, the designers and the teams and stuff like that. I mean, take a realistic pulse check. Am I really as bad as being portrayed or sort of conveyed the conversation on? As long as you have that, I'm using the word circle of friends, a circle of people whom you interact with on a periodic basis, because I think the friends are the ones who will actually take you down and the ones who will probably take you up as well. So they are a good pulse check, because when दो लोगों में आपस में भिड़न होती है, उसको लगता है वो गलत है, वो तुम गलत हो, तुम्हें लगता है वो गलत है. Always a neutral, close friendship always helps. Sometimes a good friend keep your friends closer and enemies even closer. So have those set of people whom you can actually go and check with. So these two, I would probably say, first one is more impact driven, second one is more softer, but apply these two. I think you should probably be able to navigate a few in the coming. And if there are more opportunities and more ways you can figure out, let me know. I'll be willing to learn as well. हम भी जिंदगी में गुजरते हैं अभी भी.
तो सर अब I think we are almost at 30 minutes. Now I want the cohort folks to kind of interact with you. So Janta,
Sure.
please raise your hands here. Please start raising hands. I will bring one person. So I think the first thing that I want to start with, Ramnik bhai.
Hi Dhilip. This is Ramnik. I'm working as a product manager for Global Logic. It's a Noida-based company. I'm working as a partner integration, leading Cisco as a partner for as a product on a product level. So just a question, not on what all topics you actually covered, and it was very nice to hear that from your part, from the experience you have. And I think Shravan had covered all the points which were coming in my mind. So my question is, where do you see this product space going in next 10 to 15 years, and which industry or the sector is going to lead India? So it's very general, but just wanted to see that from your vision perspective. How do you see India leading in product space, and which sector is going to come out as the prime one?
If I knew the answer, I would probably bet my money on some stocks there. But that's on a lighter note. But from a PM perspective, see, I think what I don't know if you have seen at least I have seen at least 2 decades of how the PM community, some very very closely, some as a sort of an onlooker or someone wanting to get into that space. If you look at the last maybe 15 years from 2000, so 2014 15 onwards, if you see, the India PM's largely story has been an augmenting PM to a US slash wherever the headquarters of the company is. So you always supported as an India, where you sort of the rising sun or the setting sun kind of a model which people had. You have some people there, some people here, mix them, cost arbitrage of course coming in there as well. um, so that story really played for about maybe 15 years of my career when I was looking at. But the last 8 to 10 years, what I've seen now is that especially solving for India and solving from India and solving for the world sometimes as well. These two themes are sort of playing around. So you're seeing PMs are, and there are super smart PMs and leaders who are actually emerging there. So I think, I probably rate, if I were to put somebody as someone whom I really admire as a person or a personality, is somebody like a Vijay Shekhar. I mean, he's built something which probably nobody could have imagined, at least for an India stack perspective, or using the India stack. So I think those kind of problem solving for India is going to emerge. And I think we are probably scratching the surface, given it's just a 10-year journey. And I think Prime Minister announcing the AI for all kind of thing. I think AI will become as some of our seniors in the San Jose community and Silicon Valley call it will probably be the internet movement or refrigeration movement of the internet, or of the industry, where there'll be applications and things and business models built on the AI, which is going to happen. So if you ask me, Ramnik, on the first point, I think but 10 is a long term, but definitely 5 to 7 years, I see the rise of the PM, especially a good quality PM, the good and the great, which Shravan asked me about. I think that's going to rise. So brace for a good takeoff. There'll be these bumps, which I think, there's always sneezing in the US causes a bit of cold here, but fundamentally that'll keep happening. And the second sectors, I think, if you ask me, I think. And there are enough and more research material, but I think two sectors which I'm very passionate personally, which I feel will see a growth, which has not been tapped, I think will be agri-tech, to my view. I think that'll be one area which there are probably maybe a few players, but I think that space requires a considerable amount of technology, which I think we can support with. I'm personally very fintech will be an evergreen field. I think that there'll never be it'll be like the mechanical engineering of the engineering space. So it'll be an evergreen engineering which will keep happening. The fintech will always play. Something new will always come, because end of the day, paisa bolta hai, as they say in the Bania community. So I think these two spaces are definitely to watch out for. There'll be those ancillary. There are those HR techs and stuff like that. Those will keep coming, but I think these two is something which I have sort of tracked and I'm very passionate about. I really look forward. But any other sectors, I'm willing to sort of have a view on the chat as well. So something which I've missed out.
Awesome. So
Thanks.
the next person I want to call in is Somi.
Hello, Dilip sir.
Hey.
Hey, so my question is, I have around 8 years of experience with a very diverse background. Like, I'm from data analytics and I have experience in gaming, healthcare, and tax. So do you think someone with a very strong hold on one domain, like maybe a taxing or legal, would have a upper hand while getting into the PM role than someone like me, like, who does not have a very good strong hold of 5, 6 years in one domain, but with a diverse background? So do you think that that will come in picture while getting the role?
I think I will kind of rephrase the question, which I kind of. So what she's asking is that over time she has been a generalist across roles, and there is a possibility that sometimes people who build like maybe payment systems, if they have a background in payments, they are generally preferred, right? Which are like
Correct.
super specialists in that space. So what do you think? Like that being a generalist, is it generally a boon for getting into product management roles? And I think that's the question that, if I just rephrase the question that I have
Yes, right.
to put it across here.
Yeah, no, this question is like fate versus free will. I don't know if you've been following a bit of philosophy. So it's very difficult to answer, Somi, honestly, because I personally have been, while I've been not a generalist, but I've been deep in the roles which I've done. So I've done multiple roles which have sort of led me to where I am today. So I've taken that route of, because I enjoy variety. Let me ask you, because it'll all boil down to the person you are. Because if somebody who loves variety, who probably wants to experiment, who's hunger for knowledge, is put in a particular domain to say that payment के अंदर, lending के अंदर peer lending ही देखना है आपको, you'll get bored, honestly. So I would want to, as they say in and since I'm a big proponent of the Indian medical systems like Ayurveda. In Ayurveda, I mean, this will probably help you sort of situate. Your problem is very similar. In that system of medicine, you never cure the disease. You always cure the person. So if that's the case, Somi Singh as a person, if you, the very fact that in your 8 years you've done some 5 domains, unless you have been forced to do it, which I assume probably is not the case, especially picking up tax, and definitely is not a forced decision. So if you've done that, means that you have a capability for you to switch context faster in probably than the others in the team here. So what will be suitable for you, I think, is going to be very, very special for you, and you should carve your career out. There is room for everybody in the system, because I think the way the system is going to be, uh, a Paytm may not take you today because you may not have that skill there. But there could be some company like, say, I'm just throwing up, say, Microsoft, for example, uh, where they will probably end up taking you because you have diverse, because Microsoft has multiple platforms, multiple internal and external platforms both, and products both, and they would probably want somebody who can work on a particular product for 2 years. They probably close more organizations and systems, and I'm on record, but you can delete it if you want to. They close and sort of shut an experiment and move on. So they need people who can actually move into different projects and different schemes and domains faster than probably somebody who's stuck on, say, only a particular domain. So I know it's not the perfect answer, but fundamentally suit yourself. That's more important. Don't worry what a Shravan thinks about you, or somebody else thinks about you when it is suitable to you. If you are a variety, if you love variety and if you want to, if you can excel in, because going deep is important. It doesn't matter if you sort of switch multiple places. Go deep in each of them. Tax में किया है, आपको इतना आना चाहिए. You probably are conversing with the CA and you're talking the same lingo. Have that confidence to get in. That's more important. Once you have that, I think there is space. Honestly, in India, there is space for everybody. Maybe not in other areas which I don't know of, but in India, you will always have areas to. Worst case नहीं होता यार, आप अपना खुद का company बनाओ ना. Why do you want to keep yourself employed? Because once you excel, you can employ these 40 to 43 people sitting here.
For sure.
Thank you
She
so much,
definitely
sir.
would do that. She already has an experience of that, for sure. But anyways, Somi, मैं एक बात और ऐड करना चाहूंगा जो I think दिलीप भाई ने बहुत अच्छी बात बोली है, but I would still want you to understand. What he essentially meant was that it's going deep. That's extremely important. So even if you become a generalist does not mean that you know 5 skill sets at a subpar level. You just
Yes.
make do with them. Make do does not work, right? It's a great thing that if you know 5 skill sets, but you need to be in the top 1% in all five skill sets, then only you are a great generalist. If I, as a product manager, don't know how to converse with sales folks, that shows that probably I don't have understanding of how business runs, right? So I need to be great at that also. So तभी मैं बोलता हूँ जीवन में शायद मल्टीटास्किंग जो चीज होती है ना, मल्टीटास्किंग करना बुरी बात नहीं होती, लेकिन मल्टीटास्किंग एट द कॉस्ट ऑफ क्वालिटी करना is a bad thing, right? I just wanted to add this. I think Dhilip bhai, I probably wanted to.
And वो आजकल there are these T models and all that. See, when I work for a US company, they are very good in coming out with these jargons and models, but fundamentally वो T is actually वो ancillary skills को एक्सेस ऊपर वर्टिकल एक्सेस पे लगा, हॉरिजॉन्टल एक्सेस में लगाते हैं, डेप्थ को वर्टिकल में लगाते हैं. फंडामेंटली आपको डेप्थ में कहीं ना कहीं जाना है, बाकी एक्चुअली चीजों को माननी चाहिए. दैट्स, आई मीन, कीप दैट इन माइंड. आई थिंक यू विल डू वेल वेयरएवर यू आर.
जनता किसको लैटरल और वर्टिकल थिंकिंग याद आ रही है? बहुत बढ़िया. ठीक है, तो नेक्स्ट व्हाट आई वुड वांट इज, आई वांट श्वेता, व्हाई डोंट यू बी पुट इन द स्पॉटलाइट? सॉरी गाइस, आई विल गिव यू अपॉर्चुनिटी. आई वांट द वुमेन टू स्पीक. दैट्स अ कॉन्शियस चॉइस आई एम मेकिंग. ठीक है, या श्वेता, प्लीज गो अहेड.
Yeah, so my question is, I want to know at what level the decision making happens. So if you are identifying an opportunity, so is it top down or is it bottom up? Like, is it coming from GPM, SPM, or PM, or is it that PM identifies the opportunity with research and gets the approval from the top?
Out of experience, I think, so they're both possible. So I'll be a bit cliched, but I think both are possible. See, there are certain things, at least in the companies where I work for, there is always a corporate mandate which you sort of need to abide by. So the company will say, hey, these are the top big bets which as a company we need to do, which will be typically a top-down approach where the VP or the executive VP or senior VP, whatever you want to title him, he comes and says, hey, this is what the presidents or CEOs or the boards key things which he wants to do this year. Open 25 large centers which will probably house some of these folks who will be using our product and blah blah blah. So you need to go and support that scale, which I think is given and mandated, so there is probably no choice. But the bottom up approach which you mentioned about is, how do you do that in the best possible manner? That choice he's not going to tell you. So that choice, as a PM, as a APM, and the lower in terms of the scale you are, the more deeper you should go. That's probably what I have been mentioning. So if you आपको retail shop का कुछ IT बनाना है या technology या product बनाना है, how well, because you do not expect a GPM to come into a retail shop daily, but you as a APM or a PM or a senior PM, can you go and spend that time with those retail folks and figure out what's the problem, where are the challenges, come back and report back to the GPM or even to the vice president and say, hey, this is where the problem is, this is how it's going to, and tie it back to the larger corporate objective / the mandate which he has given. So it's a nice mix and a blend which you need to look at, but probably at your level some things will be sort of forced into, some things you can build it. And good companies, and no vice president, no GPM is going to mind if you come with a good suggestion to say that, hey, this is what I want to pick up, this is going to add start to connect with the big picture always. It doesn't matter, especially our PMs are almost like mini CEOs. All that nonsense is being played out, which I think I don't really believe in, but even theoretically assume karte hain wo true hai. Start to think like a CEO, at least for that 15 minutes, and tie it back to the larger vision which that particular feature which you're building is going to help you with, or help the folks in. And the only challenge can come, and this is my own experience which I'm talking about. It's good to work for an incompetent PM. Sometimes you can, with data, you can make him competent, but an insecure PM is always dangerous. So
Yeah.
insecure PM milta to move out here.
Well put,
Okay.
well put. Amazing, yaar. So next question I would ask, I have not seen Tasin Bhai ask questions. So Tasin Bhai, please.
Thank you, Shravan. Hi, Dilip. Nice to meet
Yeah.
you. So, Dilip, I come with almost 10 years of experience in IT. I worked in different domains: healthcare, supply chain, education, commodities, and all of that. Nothing to
ये
brag.
क्या मैंडेटरी रिक्वायरमेंट है क्या श्रवण, मल्टी डोमेन बंदों को लाने का?
मेरा सर मेरा मैं क्या ये सब मुझे प्यार ही इतना करते हैं, इनको लगता है कि मेरी बातों में कोई वैल्यू है, ऐसा लगता है इनको, मैं वही बोल रहा हूँ जो कि इनको गलत लगता है, बट सत्य बात है, तो ये खुशी खुशी आए हैं और बच्चे सीख रहे हैं. Anyways, Tasin bhai, please go ahead.
Good, sir, go on.
Yeah, it's right. So I have two questions for you, Dilip. Thank you, by the way, a lot of great insights, and you have already covered one of the responses to my question. First question is on soft skill that you mentioned, right? How you communicate at each level, right, from developer to the CEO, right? In the context throughout your journey in 2 decades, how do you know and how do you learn to filter, right? What information or what context do you need to keep at which level, right? When you talk about the same topic with a developer and a CEO, how should you project your questions or responses? What exactly are the key things that the stakeholder would be looking at, right, on this topic? And
I'll give an example. Sorry, go on. Is
yeah,
there a?
go on. Yeah.
I'll probably take this, and I think of it this way. And elevator pitches, for whatever good or bad, I think that's a good way to communicate. A CEO will not have time more than say 20 seconds at probably a PM level, or probably half an hour when you're in a review with him. If I'm building something for him, I'm taking an example of the same retail store what I was telling Shweta just a while back. The way to tell him is that, sir, ये feature से आपके growth में 15% का इजाफा होगा. That's the communication which you give it to a CEO. And then if he is keen, he will probably go and ask for more questions and figure out things. कैसे करेगा, कहाँ से आएगा, क्या friction है product में, blah blah blah, all the story, if he wants to get into details. But think of him as someone who's going to read the headlines. Like in a newspaper, he is the headline reader. So आपको वो communicate करना है उसको headline में, उसको detail चाहिए, वो click करेगा, double click करेगा, चाहिए तो कर सकता है. अब developer को आप ये बोलोगे, हो गया यार, बाहर में जाए, मेरे को चाहिए नहीं ये सब, मेरे को बताओ, spec लिख के बताओ, मैं क्या कर रहा हूँ, इसको मैं ship करूंगा तो क्या, how do I ship it? I mean, not even क्या होगा, how do I ship it? So the text speccing has to be reasonably detailed, where you start to write to say that इस product में button यहाँ बनेगा, इसमें color ये होगा, इस color. So that conversation becomes contextual as you start to go on, as long as you know your audience well. So that is where probably हम empathy बोलते हैं. Empathy बाहर के लिए नहीं, अपने लिए भी चाहिए होता है. When you work with your team members, do you have empathy for your own people you're working with? Do you have empathy for the same CEO you're working with? End of the day, he's your stakeholder. So fundamentally, that empathy is what is going to pull and have the communication doesn't. A lot of people say I am not a very good communicator. मैं तो कह रहा हूँ गूंगा भी अच्छा कम्युनिकेट कर जाता है. अच्छी चीज को अगर करना है, even a dumb man can do it, because fundamentally communication is your being which is getting projected in words. So when you do that, you have to probably ensure that उसको क्या चाहिए, उसको कितने टाइम पे चाहिए, have that sort of thing laid out, as I said, in the newspaper context. वो he is a headline grabber, उसको headlines दो, detail चाहिए तो वो उसको अंदर घुसेगा, नहीं चाहिए तो just leave him. But fundamentally, आपके जो key बंदे हैं developers को get into details where you want to, and which I'm sure you're probably good at it. That's why you're doing what you're doing.
I think that is what even Shravan keeps us dosing every day about empathy being the key mantra. And it comes by virtue, right? You cannot seek it and learn it outside. You have to be a better person to have that empathy.
And absolutely.
Right? So
Yeah, absolutely.
One more quick question, if Shravan allows me. I see that you are managing Adobe's, first of all, is that Adobe or Adobe? I had always this thing.
Adobe. Adobe. One interview tip in case you come into this company, गलती से Adobe बोल दोगे तो बाहर कर देंगे पहले. So you call it as Adobe.
Thank me for that, asking that question. Yeah. So in Adobe experience management that you're handling, I see there's a lot of elements of AI and ML, and you also mentioned that India's future is towards that. So as a product manager, how competent do you think, right? Because AI and ML, you get into a mode of it might be too technical, the models of design and everything. How competent a product manager should become? How much well-versed we should go, knowing that future is moving towards it, so that our interaction with developers and other folks in the community whom we are working with, we are well prepared to embrace that.
So I'm releasing one of the AI features in a beta mode in about a couple of months from now. My own personal interest in that area has been immense. In fact, just prior to this role, a couple of roles where I did, there was a component of AI, not the generative part, but the model building, and Azure also had it, and some of the other stuff which I worked on had it. It's a personal interest area, and thanks, good or bad, I never knew when I went into Venkateshwara for statistics that 25 साल बाद वो इतना popular course हो जाएगा. But effectively, I think that's one grounding which I understand. The understanding of statistical models or mathematics is very important. So I mean, keep reading it. I think, and I kept telling in the beginning as well, relearning has to be a continuous effort. I mean, you can't postpone it. One of the ways which I feel is very, very good is I always make good friends with some of the key devs who work on, in this case, AI particularly. I sometimes pull them up and say, 2-3 घंटा on Teams में बैठता हूँ Friday को. Friday evenings are typically left for and reserved for some of these learnings which I do with them. So I go deep and understand. So I use this phrase a lot of times. I don't think like a developer, but I think with a developer. So that's something which I feel is something which, as a PM, you should be. Don't think, because if you think like a developer, he'll outsmart you. He's much more smarter given he's been doing, assuming that you've been not a developer. But if you think with a developer, galore. I mean, you will get so many things out of him. You will be able to contribute back to him, because he's also looking for reinforcement of his models and strategies and thoughts. आप उसको contribute कर पाओगे. So spend time, especially in the AI world. Spend time. You can't be a hands-off AI guy. As much as possible, get in. And I think सारी कंपनियां फ्री में कोर्स बांट रही है, अब तो कर ही लो यार कुछ तो.
Key takeaway thing with the developer. That is a nice key takeaway. Thank you.
Awesome. So next I would want Anshul to speak up.
Dilip, I connected with you so much in the first introduction part, because I myself got inclined towards product management, because I was working with the co-founders for a 0 to 1 product, and in the process of that, I worked on a number of components. My question for you is, so we talked about a lot of soft skills like empathy, inquisitiveness, and all of these things. One, because I come from a developer background, my approach is to either do a certification or to prove a certain skill set that you have. You cannot prove these in a span of, say, an hour long conversation. Like it's a longer term. Like how would you prove conflict resolution quality in 1 hour to somebody? So one, how do you develop these skill sets? Because that's also a long process. And two, how would you sell these skill sets to, say, if you are taking my interview or if we are having a conversation, how would I sell these qualities to you?
So
ये Adobe का प्री टेस्ट करा रहे हो क्या मेरे से?
बिल्कुल मुझे ऐसा ही लग रहा था।
मैं देना चाह रहा हूँ मैं देना चाह रहा
बिल्कुल। So I think ये काफी लोगों का सवाल है, and I think what I would do is, can you Athar, can you also put Bhavna in the spotlight? Yeah. So I think Bhavna is a PM. She has been working across multiple companies. She's a mentor in the cohort also, and coincidentally, she also reports to me. That I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but then again, so I think she also had a similar question. Why now, Bhavna? Why don't you reiterate that to Dilip?
Sure, Shravan. Definitely, it's an fortune for me to be a mentee under Shravan and even being able to report to him also. Hi, Dhilip. I definitely want to ask this very similar question, which is like what are the current expectation from SPM, PM, and APM level? While kind of in Adobe, you guys look forward to hire someone at these levels basically.
Or more from a very generic enterprise.
Yeah,
level.
maybe from a generic perspective
Enterprise
also you
level.
can say, and Adobe specific you can also be.
Yes, so more from a generic enterprise level, like companies in Microsoft. What do they essentially look for at different levels for a PM? I think that's the question what they're trying to ask. Yeah,
it's a bit of a controversial. I mean, I have a controversial answer to that. I think. See, I don't, having cleared some of these in companies. I mean, I personally don't like the way a person is selected. It's a tough call, because it's a race which we get, because sometimes the interview is something which is designed for a particular skill set for you to get measured, and when you come into the company you do something very different. So that's always a challenge. And the way we are interviewing, I think it's a very a boss subordinate relationship even in the interview level, which I think is not a good. I've seen very few companies which get into a conversational mode with I mean, probably Amazon does that in some ways. I don't know if somebody's there from that. I've not gone through that, but I think I've heard Amazon does something on those leadership principles. So I'm not a big proponent of the way the interviews are conducted, in terms of the way the recruitment itself as a process. I think needs probably a overhaul and rehaul in some sense. But to come to specific companies which typically look at, I think one, I'm assuming that you're through that screening process. So वो आपको interview phase में पहुंच गए हैं, वो कैसे पहुंचे हैं उसका मैं एक simple वो बोल देता हूँ. If you keep applying, I think there will be a very difficult ability to so always go through a resource or referral. I think that's always good. I think I'm sure most of you would have experienced by now if you've not done it already. So especially the larger ones, I think they get Microsoft. I don't know if statistically, I remember some 10,000 or lakh plus CVs in a year, in a day. Sorry, in the head office, if I'm not wrong. So that huge number, which I think is, so you can't expect somebody to do that. Assuming that you've crossed that stage where you're in the interview phase, I think the key element which I feel really ticks is if you have gone through a referral, it also depends on, and this is something which I'm sure most of you would also felt. It is not the answer which what you are answering is right. It's what in his mind so you have to read his mind in that sense. So unless until it's a very standard, and the guy is a very matured guy, and he's interviewing, because in some of the roles which we hired recently, we interviewed some 25 candidates over the last few months. Unfortunately or fortunately, I had to also make that selection that he's good and he's not good and he's good to the next one. So it's always the person whom we are. I mean, you have to sort of map the person. So you have to map Dilip when you get in. How do you map Dilip? You probably see my social profile. You ask Shravan Bhaiya, or you probably ask people whom you have worked with. Once you know me as a person, I think that will always have an upper hand when you go and answer some of those questions. So that's Anshul, for you. So that's one way to sort of get the right answer, if I were to use that word, because a lot of interviews say there is no right answer, including these YouTube में जो course बेचते हैं वो भी बोलते हैं there is no right answer. But unfortunately, मैं तो एक right answer देख के किसी को hire कर रहा हूँ ना, wrong answer वाले को तो hire नहीं कर रहा हूँ मैं anyways. So how do you get into the thing of getting into his mind? I think that is something which you need to get into that piece. The second piece, which I think is, I sometimes find, this is my observation and which I think is true for many, question कुछ पूछता हूँ वो पूरा रामायण शुरू हो जाते हैं. So be very very specific and be crystal clear. इसके लिए practice करना हो, अपने शीशे में रख करके practice करो, record करो, hear it back and keep doing it, and you will improve over a period of time. So that is something something which you need to be good articulator, be crisp articulator, be a very clear articulator, because उस 1 घंटे में मैं articulation नहीं देख रहा हूँ ना, और कुछ तो नहीं, आपका skills तो मैं कुछ नहीं देख रहा हूँ, unless I'm asking a coding question which I'm sure I'm not going to ask you. The third, I think, which I think is also true for Microsoft and Adobe, there will always be those scenario questions which you have to be prepared. A lot of times I found people, मैं question कुछ पूछ रहा हूँ, वो scenario कुछ अपना बना के बोल रहा है, so be prepared on the scenario questions. अगर if and you know most of the roles, you know where you're applying. For example, if it's a data product manager role, it is very very clear that आपको MDF आना चाहिए, या आपको data ingestion कैसे करते हैं वो आना चाहिए, तो वो उस role के लिए आपको prepare करना पड़ेगा. वो चीजें you see, you can't forget the basics. So get your basics funda जो है वो right, get your communications clear and concise, don't go all over the place, and when in doubt always ask that question. Most importantly, know the person you're attempting to, because end of the day, if I'm a double PhD in data science and you're blabbering something on data science to me, he will cut you in a minute, because he'll know that the next point which you're going to talk about is something which he has gone 3 steps ahead. So if you understand the person वो क्या है, you will also probably have that knack of answering the person reasonably well in that sense. So that's my sense. And जब इंटरव्यू आएगा तो पिंक कर लेना, मैं बता दूंगा.
बढ़िया बढ़िया. तो अब मैं चाहता हूँ देव भाई, फिर ऋषभ भाई एंड देन आशु विल डू दैट. और सर अंत में सर मेरा एक सवाल है, मैं आपसे जरूर करूंगा, तो बट पहले बच्चों का खत्म करते हैं. देव भाई प्लीज, अथर्व कैन यू पुट देव भाई इन द स्पॉटलाइट? या सो देव भाई इज ऑलरेडी अ पीएम सर, जस्ट टू सेट कॉन्टेक्स्ट, ही इज वर्किंग इन दुबई, ही इज जॉइनिंग अस फ्रॉम दुबई. तो देव भाई प्लीज, ओवर टू यू. Yeah.
Hello. Hi, Dilip. So thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to ask this question. So, Dilip, you mentioned that you worked with Adobe and you've been working on some AI products. So recently, Adobe launched their Firefly generative AI product tool, right, which converts text into images and all. So I'm a big follower of Naval, and he once mentioned that probably the creative workspaces would be the last frontier which AI will take over, right? Now that you can create all sort of creative things, is it true that we are at the cusp of real AGI in the next few years or maybe a decade max? Or is it just another one of the hype cycles which we have been seeing for the last multiple decades? So based upon your informed view, where do you think this space is evolving?
मैं पोजीशन जो बोलूंगा अडोब का पोजीशन नहीं है ये, तो कहीं कल मेरे को कोट कर देगा श्रवण या समर एल्स. ये अडोबी का पोजीशन है, बट it's a very personal opinion which I have. I think creativity by itself can probably never be replaced, and I think AGI अगर उसको if it cannot be controlled normally, it will be controlled by regulation. So to my view, nobody's want to risk the human race going away and stuff like that. So there'll always be that intelligence of a human which I think will surpass the machine in certain ways. So creativity will always be a good measure which will keep sort of you'll keep sort of having that upgradation of your own skill set, which I think will keep. So there, to answer your question, I think it's a very probably Shantanu Narayan and even Satya Nadella may not have the right answers to my view, and even Sam Altman who tried whatever the stunts we had for the last 3-4 weeks back. And so मेरा एक personal feeling है, I think the ingenuity of the human and the creativity of the human, I think it's not going to go away. I think it's sort of it's very impossible, but there is going to be augmenting the human intelligence which is going to happen, including creativity and things like Firefly and the stuff which you talked about. I think that's going to be in plenty. What's going to happen, to my view, is that AI based businesses is going to emerge. Probably that's where the challenge is going to be, and that's probably where the AI is going to be put to use, because the minute it starts to hit the humans, I think there will be some form of regulation which will come in, because I don't think so the mature leaders of any country or the world will sort of make it so rich and sort of make it more dangerous, if I were to use that word, and unethical in certain ways, to sort of go down the drain. I think that's probably not going to happen, to my view. But fundamentally, it's going to be aiding. Second, it's also going to help you create new business models, which I think is going to be the key. So look out for it. I think that's where probably because the work which I have been doing and what we are doing as Adobe is all at this point in time, the co-piloting concept which we are having is all about augmenting the human right now. I think that it'll take its own time. उसके शेयर प्राइस बढ़ेंगे उसकी वजह से, फिर अगली फ्रंटियर जो रिसर्च चल रहा है उस पे उसके ऊपर से काम चलने वाला है, मुझे लग रहा है. Is it the doomsday? I think is probably not the worry at this point in time. If not, as I said, if not regulated by the machine, it will be regulated by the governments, to my view.
Okay, sorry, Shravan, one last second follow-up question on to that.
Yeah.
So I understand your point that it's going to be more of a co-pilot thing where will be assisting us. So we as aspiring and existing product managers, is how do we make the most use of this trend, and especially those who don't have like a statistical background that you had, which is very, very important to get into this space. So what your recommendations would be if we want to place ourselves into this stream going forward?
I think अभी तो I said it jokingly, but I'm now serious. Almost every company which is in AI is actually offering courses here. Start with, I mean, build a sprint, and Shravan can really help you sort of put that learning plan or learning path, as you call it, because if you don't want to be an AI PM, you have to be a PM knowing AI. So I think वो तो चलने ही वाला है. So start with basics and maybe Andrew Ng and things like that, and that's a good start point. And then किस area, because sometimes आपको भी पता नहीं कौन सी area में मेरे को जाना है. If you're wanting to get into a text-based stuff or voice-based stuff or something else, or this creative stuff which is getting played out, play around that space. Sometimes you learn along the way. But basics को रखने के लिए तो मुझे लगता है you'll have to study. And comes to my original point, I think when I started off this meeting, 2 साल में नया पढ़ना तो छोटी बात है. वो तो मेरे ख्याल से हर 6 महीने में कुछ ना कुछ पढ़ते रहना पड़ेगा. तो you'll probably be, I don't know if you have kids, but आजकल मुझे लगता है मैं और बच्चे साथ ही पढ़ते हैं हम दोनों. तो and that trend is going to continue as we go along. So probably I read more than my kids now. So who are probably in the college, I mean school, colleges जाएंगे अभी तो.
Sure. There was just one
Thank
point
you.
that I would want to add to the question, since you were researching so much about the AGI movement and whether it will be a breakthrough or not. I would definitely recommend you to read about Turing machines and Turing tests. And something about Turing machines and Turing tests. So just read about it. You'll find a lot of context about how the development of that entire artificial narrow intelligence or artificial general intelligence kind of came into being, right? Awesome. What I would
Thank
do
you.
next is, Ashu bhai, you come in, and then Rishabh bhai, I'll come to you. Okay? Yeah. So Ashu bhai is again a PM, actually working as a PM. And Ashu bhai, over to you, please. Go ahead.
Thank you, Shaman Bhaiya. Thank you for introduction. Thank you, Dhilip sir, for taking out your time and sharing the real wisdom with us, sir. Sir, I am currently working as a senior product manager. And sir, मैं वो भुक्तभोगी हूँ, वो misfit product culture जो शमन भैया ने discuss किया ना. तो I am already in that transition stage wherein I am identifying वो जो व्याचार्थ और लक्ष्यार्थ था का आपने definition दिया. तो sir, मेरा question ये है कि for example, if I get into a company, what are those red flags that I should look after every now and then कि ये meet हो रहे हैं अब सारे, अब तो resume update करने का टाइम हो चुका है. तो सर वो क्या रेड फ्लैग्स हैं सर?
ठीक है, please go ahead. Sorry to interject.
Okay. See, first I think red flag is you'll be ignored. I think that's probably the first red flag, which typically अगर बहुत ही अच्छा कल्चरल कंपनी नहीं है या कल्चर्ड कल्चरल नहीं बोलना चाहिए, कल्चर्ड कंपनी नहीं है, which is not good HR practices, I think the first thing you will be ignored out of the key things, which I think that's the first red flag or the first sign of red flag which you look at it. There'll be times where you will be I'm assuming that you're in an IC capacity here. So if that's the case, then things will sort of flow around you and you will not even know what's happening. So that is the red flag number 2 which will happen. So आपको ignore करा जाएगा, आपकी इर्द गिर्द चीजें होंगी, आप उसमें participate नहीं कर पाएंगे, करेंगे भी तो बहुत, for all you know you will never be taken seriously आपके points को. The third point, which I think is again a very, if not a company with a culture, I think what will also happen is that you will in a very dirty scenario you will be put on performance issues and all that stuff जो होता है typically, which is where the HR gets involved. The best in these cases I think if you don't want to go through all the cycles, I think move on is my recommendation. I think that's an important step which you need to take. But these 3-4 signs are typically what I have seen. Ignore is the best one. I think everybody plays that politics very well. You ignore it's like not watering a plant, it'll dry on its own. So that's typically the strategy played. So that's the biggest signal. If you have anything else जो हो रहा है मैं बता दूंगा, हाँ ठीक हो रहा है नहीं हो रहा है आपके साथ में.
Awesome. Rishabh bhai, please can we put Rishabh bhai to the spotlight? So Rishabh bhai, please introduce yourself and give your background. That would be lovely.
So firstly, hi Shravan, thank you for allowing me to talk. And hi Dhilip, it's a pleasure knowing you and getting your viewpoint on everything regarding product management and your entire journey from where you started off and sort of where you are currently. So Just to give you some context about me, I have 11 years of work experience across, sales and customer success functions, and I'm someone looking to transfer my skills to product management and enter that side. So basically, a transition from my existing skills. So you mentioned talking to one of your skips back in the day, talking about, where you wanted to sort of get into product management and what were your strengths and weaknesses. So I have two questions basically. Number one is that could you dive a little bit deeper on what exactly was that framework that you had followed to understand your strengths, weaknesses, and also then trying to go deeper into what would be the right way to go ahead with product management? That's number one. The second question would be on the lines of which is a little bit different, which is once you are a product manager, right? And then how do you decide that, say, if you're doing well in a product, your product is doing really well, and your customers are satisfied, like all of them are giving a good NPS rating for your product, and it's selling like hotcakes, and your competition is also not up to the mark. So how do you decide on making the right improvements to the product which is already doing well? So two separate questions over here.
Okay. I don't recall the framework, so I probably will have it in my email. Yeah, it was one framework which he used with me, but largely it had three important data points. I think that's what is more important. Frameworks, as I said, Americans are known for inventing frameworks, if not anything else. Well, but what's very important is the fact that it sort of mapped what is it that I really love, what is it that I'm really good at, what is it which I want to, what is it that I'm successful in. I think those three were sort of the matrix of all the three resulted in sort of key skills coming out, that these three, if I have in whatever I want to do, will result in a happy me and a better role which I would take. So these three are sort of the key things. I think that I just can't recall the name of the model. It must be. I'll try and
Probably Ikigai.
push Java.
Ikigai.
No,
I
no,
guess
no, it's not.
Ikigai.
Ikigai just came a few years, but this I'm talking 2012. It was much before Ikigai. So I just can't recall the name of the model, but I'll try, and if I can figure out the framework, I should probably be able to send you. And for all you know, it could be Ikigai is probably the new wine. The older wine would have been something else, whatever that was. So don't worry too much of the model, but fundamentally these 3 points per focus career, that will help you get on and have that conversation always with somebody who knows you very well, not just as a manager, but I always pick a Skip as a good entity, because Skip knows you enough, but he doesn't know you deep. So he can actually tell you some of your weaknesses, which probably, because he anyways gets to know what's happening as a leader. HR tells him, the manager tells him. So Skip is a good one, because you can always, or if you have a mentor who's probably a peer of your manager, those are also good guys, because you can have that free willing conversation. Sometimes managers like a father है. Sometimes father के साथ इतनी बात नहीं कर सकते हो जितने आप अपने ताऊ जी से या चाचा जी से कर सकते हो. I don't know if you understand Indian context there, the family concept which I went. So have that conversation on these 3 points. That's very important. You will be able to figure it out. On the second question, if you can just articulate it again, please.
So it was basically the fact that if suppose you're a product manager and you built a product solution or feature set, or maybe just the product itself is doing really well. It's selling like hotcakes. People love it, and the NPS is really high, and the competition is nowhere close to our product, right? So how do you decide that, okay, we should still keep on improving on our current product? And if you do decide that yes, we need to, what do you do to ensure that there is continuous improvement into the product?
So I think it's a good utopian situation to have, but I think it never happens. But assuming that's happening, and you're probably, say your Microsoft Office in 2007, there was no competition, nothing in the vicinity who were coming in, and there was no Google at that time. Probably the innovation is always the drive is always to help the users you are servicing and to make their life. If it is X, then you probably help them get it better by 3x or 5x, for example. So that's that internal drive to get your sort of aha moment for those people. If they've been using Excel, maybe when the pivot would have come, that would have been an aha, because when Excel was there, Lotus had already disappeared by then. So what was the aha moment for the customer when the pivot as a pivot table as a concept came in? What was that drive which would have gone into that PM's mind? Is essentially the ability to go and service the customer in a way that he's sort of ecstatic. So that ecstasy maintenance is one piece which I always look at. And incidentally, one of my products which I'm looking at is that stage what you spoke of. There are competitors, but I think it's still doing well, and we're doing that stuff. And then there are those usual Kaizen kind of improvements, daily improvements on something. I mean, have a Kaizen workboard. Some companies have that, particularly where they want to have some small stuff going in every release. What we call as exciters in the product language. So कुछ ना कुछ exciters करते रहिए customer के लिए. So since there are no competitors, वो excite होंगे आपका product को देख करके. I think those two probably I can think just offhand given the situation. Again, there could be more, but two something which I can just think as we speak on that. And you can put both of this can be put into practice. One is a bit more strategic in nature. The other is very operational, daily tactical stuff which you can do.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. So in the interest of time, Dilip, I think we are at the end of the session. But the first thing that before I ask you my question is that I want everyone to open your screens. Let's do a photograph. That is super important. Let's do it on 3. I want everyone to do that. Bhavna, please. Dev bhai, everyone, right? Who is essentially on the screen. Amazing, yeah. Amazing. Super cool, yeah. So at 3, 1, 2, 3. Cheese. Awesome. तो सर अब मेरा आपसे एक छोटा सा सवाल है एंड आई होप आई एम जस्ट टेकिंग 2 more minutes of your time is that सर थोड़ा एम्बिग्यूअस सवाल है और आप समझ सकते हैं थोड़ा डम सवाल भी हो सकता है. मैं आपसे सिर्फ इतना पूछना चाहता हूँ जीवन में अच्छे इंसान कैसे बने. उसके आप मुझे कुछ ज्ञान अगर आप इनको दे सकते हो बच्चों को, तो क्या वो 2-3 प्रिंसिपल्स हैं जो आपको ऐसा लगता है जो आपको एक अच्छा इंसान बनाता है. मेरा ये सवाल है सर, बस.
You're putting me in a spot, man. This is more tougher than cracking some of the interviews I've done in my life. So okay. So I think essentially as humans, my thing is the qualities are always laid out. आप कोई भी scripture उठा के देख लीजिए, कोई भी philosophy I mean, why we shouldn't really restrict it to a particular religion. कोई भी philosophy उठा के देख लीजिए, there will always be ये सत्य बोलो, चोरी मत करो, blah blah blah. All those qualities are sort of defined. I think the first, if it is all in the books, एक कहावत होती है that सारी चीजें जो हैं पुस्तक से मस्तक में ले आओगे आप. Nothing beyond that. But I think what is going to be the key is that if you start following somebody who's following that. So in my life, I have probably had mentors, people whom I look up to, both from my own practices and also my official stuff. If you start following people who follow something of those, they are actually वो जीवन में उतार रहे हैं उस principles को, या उस points को, या उस philosophy को, या उस अच्छाई को जो आप अच्छा बनना चाह रहे हो. So start, because we are very good at sort of mimicking and following something. I mean, like you first people whom we start following are parents, for example. So if your mother and father are doing a few things, you sort of ape them in the first few years or formative years. Similarly, you start to ape your managers. And in fact, there were times where I probably was sounding like my manager sometimes when I was speaking in my initial years. So you start to ape. So when you want to become a good man, start aping a good man. And कौन आपका good man है, God man होगा, pun intended, is something which you need to decide. आपकी goodness की definition क्या है? और मेरे लिए कुछ हो सकती है, श्रवण टिक्कू के लिए कुछ हो सकती है, निखिल के लिए कुछ हो सकती है, अथर्व के लिए कुछ हो सकती है. There are some universal ones, what we call as God, in not getting into the religion philosophy there. But fundamentally, start following somebody whom you feel is good, whom you get connected to. You will have those connections, and you feel that hey, this is इसके साथ मेरे को करना है, वो उसके साथ तादाद में बनाना है, तो आप start following. मतलब you start to be him. एक भ्रमरकीट नाय बोलते हैं, आपको शायद पता होगा. You buzz like a bee, you become the bee after a while. So start following someone you want to become. You'll probably start to resemble and be, and that's probably my mantra. If you want to be a good man, follow a good man and be a good man. And if it is Shravan, guys, it's an indirect pitch for him. follow him, become like.
मेरे से तो ये बच्चे कुछ नहीं सीखते, यही सीखते रहते हैं कि ये आदमी जबरदस्ती बुलाता रहता है कॉल्स में मेरे को. बट आप सारे लोगों को सुनने आते हैं, मैं सच बता रहा हूँ सर आपको. मेरे को सुनने नहीं आते, मैं आपको सच बता रहा हूँ ये बात. बट एनी विच वेज, ठीक है सर. आई थिंक once again I am super grateful. May Lord
Thanks,
Shiva
sir.
bless you, and I am super grateful. We would keep inviting you for sessions. I think these kids will definitely. और कल जनता अगेन, मुझे दिलीप के फॉलोअर्स कम से कम 2-3 हजार तो बढ़ा दो. मुझे नहीं पता कैसे भी, मुझे नहीं पता, तो मुझे 20 पोस्ट चाहिए मिनिमम. ठीक है, तो ये करो. और simultaneously, and please give me the feedback on the channel. I want to send it to Dhilip and give your honest feedback, what you learned, what you didn't learn, and what are the things that you essentially kind of internalized. Once again, sir, super grateful. Thank you very much for giving us your time.
My pleasure. No, I really enjoyed it. I'll take maybe 10-15 seconds more, and I obviously can't speak to all of you in a particular forum, but I think route it to Shravan and say, what did you not like? What are the things which you want me to kind of start to be a bit more better in whatever I've had. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm also human. I'm trying to learn a few things. So help me improve. As I said, I'm a very big proponent of reverse mentoring. क्या मैंने ठीक नहीं बोला यार, मेरे को इसके थ्रू फीडबैक दीजिए. सारे मेरे को रीच आउट, आई एम श्योर not be possible of the 30-40 odd. So Shravan के through मेरे को बता दीजिए, especially the ones which I feel I should be getting better at. So that'll be nice of you.
Awesome. I will
Sir,
just
we feel you should come more often in front of people. There is a lot to learn from you. That's what we felt. Like, I think you should become more visible, more approachable to people so that, they can learn a lot more from you, basically. I think that this is the first time we have seen you. We would ideally want to see more of you, basically, here.
I think everybody loves you, sir. That is crystal clear. मेरे लिए तो नहीं रुकते ये, मेरी कॉल छोड़ के चले जाते हैं. मैं सच बता रहा हूँ आपको.
2024 की इलेक्शन लड़ लूंगा तो तब देखते हैं मेरी फॉलोइंग कैसी है.
ठीक है सर, मैं बस रिकॉर्डिंग म्यूट कर रहा हूँ.